Hello, and welcome to this pre-recorded webinar covering the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council's 2027 Flexible Support Grant. In this webinar, we'll cover important information about flexible support, including resources for applicants, eligibility rules, how to apply, and more. On the screen is our agenda for today. Watch for the new 27 logo throughout the presentation, highlighting new additions and updates to the Flexible Support Program for 2027 that are important for you to be aware of. But first, a little bit about what we do here at the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council, or MRAC. MRAC's mission is to improve access to the arts in Minnesota's 7-county metropolitan area through support to artists and arts organizations. We are one of Minnesota's 11 regional arts councils, each dedicated to supporting arts and culture in their respective counties. MRAC serves Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Scott, and Washington counties. On the right of the screen, a map of the 7 metro counties is presented in different shades of blue and green, with each county labeled by name. We receive funding from legacy amendment revenue through the Minnesota State Legislature and the Minnesota State Arts Board, with money from the state's general fund and Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. We also receive funding from the McKnight Foundation. On the right of the screen, there are the logos for the Legacy Amendment, the Minnesota State Arts Board, and the McKnight Foundation. And here we are, the MRAC team working on flexible support this year. If you have any questions while you are working on your flexible support application, you can reach out to us at our main contact email address, flexiblesupport@mrac.org. That's flexiblesupport at MRAC.org. And while we're here, let's do a few quick intros. My name is Ryan Worden. I use he, him pronouns, and my picture is on the far right of the screen. In that picture, I'm wearing a white dress shirt and standing in front of some green shrubs. And I will pass it to Pablo to introduce himself.
Welcome, everybody, to our webinar today. My name is Pablo Siqueiros. I'm one of the program officers as well, working on flexible support. I'm right here in the middle of our slide. I'm wearing a dark blue jacket over a red pink button-up shirt in front of a metal dark green garage door. And also today, although she won't be joining us on this webinar, our colleague Masami Kawasato will be working on flexible support as well. And you can see her photo here on the left-hand side of the screen, where she is wearing a white blouse. She has dark hair and is in front of some trees and other greenery as well.
Perfect. Well, I think it's time. Let's get into applicant resources. We have resources already available to help your group apply for flexible support. Everything is available on the Flexible Support webpage at mrac.org/flexible support. That's mrac.org/flexible support. Most important is the grant program overview and application instructions. In addition to watching this webinar, you should read this overview very thoroughly. It provides all the rules and details you need for a flexible support application. The webpage also has the link to our submittable interface, where you will fill out and submit your app. Additionally, we have a narrative drafting document and a budget plan drafting sheet. If you'd like to work out all of your answers before getting started in Submittable, you can use these to start a rough draft of your answers to the proposal description questions and budget items. Just to note that you cannot actually upload these documents to Submittable or send them to staff as your submission. If you use these templates, you will need to transfer your answers into Submittable. For 2027, we have 3 new guides to help you with different aspects of the application. These are instructional guides for filling out the budget plan spreadsheet and the leadership section, which have been updated this year. These guides include screenshots of the application and examples so you can understand how to fill out these sections correctly. We also have a new guide for applicants and fiscal sponsors to help both parties understand how to make sure your sponsorship is both confirmed and approved by the application deadline. And I would highly recommend checking that out if you plan to apply as a group with a fiscal sponsor. Also, if you want to review the entire application before opening Submittable, we also provide a list of application questions and explanations. We do, however, also encourage you to make an account and review the application in the Submittable interface as well. Getting used to the online interface can be helpful for when you are ready to fill out your responses on that platform. We will also, again this year, be hosting public Q&A sessions for applicants. We will hold all of these sessions on Zoom, and you can find the dates and times listed here on this slide. You can also head to the Flexible Support page on our website for the dates and the link to register. Finally, if you have more specific questions, you can request a one-on-one meeting, typically over Zoom or over the phone. This meeting request form is available on the Flexible Support website. And just a reminder about this, that our program staff can only address questions related to eligibility or clarify aspects of the overview or application in order to keep the process fair and balanced for all applicants. And now, everyone, some important dates. Flexible Support has 2 rounds. You can apply in either round, but if you receive an award in round 1, you cannot apply again in round 2. For round 1, the application window opens July 13th, 2026, and the deadline is Friday, August 7th at 11:59 p.m., just before midnight. Round 2 opens January 11th, 2027, and ends February 5th at 11:59 p.m. The 11:59 p.m. Friday deadlines are new this year, so make sure you mark your calendar accordingly. Really important to also note that application assistance ends the day of the deadline at 5 p.m. I repeat, 5 p.m., the day of the deadline. This means that staff cannot answer questions or provide assistance, including technical assistance, with your application after 5 p.m. Keep in mind that technical difficulties can occur when submitting your application. So, yeah, please do not wait until right before midnight to submit. Try to submit as early as possible. So if something does go wrong, you can still get assistance. Now, let's get into flexible support. We'll start with the grant purpose and some general facts. This grant provides up to $25,000 to help organizations and groups create and sustain Minnesotans' meaningful access to the arts. Organizations and groups can get funding for operations and/or organizational capacity, certain equipment purchases, and/or facility improvements, and/or arts programming. We'll go over some examples in the eligible and ineligible expenses section of the presentation. So, who is eligible to apply for this grant? All applicant organizations and groups must have a primary address in one of the 7 metro counties: Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Scott, or Washington. We'll go over additional requirements in the organization and group eligibility portion of the presentation. How much grant funding can our group apply for? All eligible groups may request up to $25,000. Also, a portion of the funds will be set aside for organizations or groups whose leadership team includes a majority of individuals who identify as members of our priority communities: Black, Indigenous, and/or a person of color, BIPOC, and/or a person with a disability, and/or a member of the LGBTQ plus community. And also for all organizations or groups from the greater metro counties of Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Scott, and Washington. When can our proposal happen? For round 1, the eligible funding period is December 7, 2026 to June 30th, 2028. Another new requirement for this year is for round 1 applicants. If you apply in round 1, you must select a proposal start date on or before June 7, 2027. This helps ensure that funds are distributed to the community in a timely manner. And for round 2, the funding period is June 7, 2027 through June 30th, 2028. And I'll pass it off to Pablo to speak about eligibility.
Fantastic. Okay, so remember, all grant activities must take place, all grant funds must be spent, and all expenses must be incurred during the eligible funding period. So this is something that will sometimes trip applicants up every year, especially the idea of incurred expenses. So incurred expenses are also known as promises to pay. Because applicants aren't guaranteed funding, you may not make any promises to pay outside of the eligible funding period. This means that all contracts or agreements must be both entered into or signed and executed, paid out, during the funding period. For example, if you are applying for round 1 and you would like to contract a teaching artist to run an art day for kids, you and that teaching artist cannot sign any contract before December 7th, 2026, which is when the eligible funding period begins. Additionally, you must pay the artist for their work on or before the end of June 30th, 2028, which is the end of the eligible funding period. This year, we have simplified our requirements for applicants that have previously received a flexible support grant. If you received an award in 2025 or 2026, your final report for that grant must be submitted and approved before the application deadline. Again, for round 1, that is Friday, August 7th, 2026, and for round 2, it's Friday, February 5th, 2027, both at 11:59 p.m. Keep in mind, as Ryan mentioned earlier, staff work normal business hours from 9 to 5. So if you try to submit your final report after 5 p.m. on the deadline day, staff will not be able to approve it in time, and therefore your 2027 application will be ineligible, unfortunately. So new in 2027, we are implementing a required grantee orientation. So if you receive an award, which congratulations, someone from your organization will attend a 30-minute online training that includes education about the legacy amendment, which funds this grant. We will also go over what is in your grant agreement and how to provide acknowledgement of your grant award. Finally, we will go over aspects of the submittable interface you will use to manage your grant, including where you'll find your final report and project change forms, and contacting your program staff representative with questions as well. So now we're going to discuss more specifics about organization and group eligibility. First, we have our eligible organizations. These include 501c3 nonprofits, community education units of a school district, and public entities such as units of state, local, or tribal governments. 501c3 nonprofits may be arts, cultural, or non-arts, non-cultural focused. If your group does not have a federally tax-exempt status or otherwise does not meet these classifications, you will have to apply with a fiscal sponsor. So before we move on to the rules for all applicants, we're going to highlight some important information for groups looking to apply with a fiscal sponsor. So a fiscal sponsor is a federally tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit that will receive the MRAC grant money directly and manage the financial aspects of your project for your group if you receive a grant award. In addition to eligibility requirements for all groups, which we'll go over next, there are additional requirements for your fiscal sponsor themselves. Your fiscal sponsor must be registered with the IRS as a federally tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit organization, and this includes religious institutions as well, and their address must match their IRS filing. They must have an address within the state of Minnesota and have an active nonprofit organization registration with the Minnesota Secretary of State. Within the flexible support application, you will send the fiscal sponsor agreement form to your contact at your fiscal sponsor. Your fiscal sponsor must complete this form before the application deadline for your application to be eligible. There are no exceptions to this rule. This year, we've created a new guide that will help both applicants and fiscal sponsors with this process. We encourage those applying with a fiscal sponsor to review this guide and to send it to their fiscal sponsor as well. The fiscal sponsorship for grants submittable guide for sponsors and applicants is available on the flexible support webpage. So because MRAC serves the 7-county greater metro area, all organizations and groups must have a primary address in Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Scott, or Washington County. Additionally, for all 501c3 organizations, the address on your application must match what is on file with the IRS. You may use a P.O. box only if that is what is filed with the IRS as your official address, and if it is also within the 7 metro counties. And for groups with a fiscal sponsor, you must have your own address in one of the 7 metro counties. You may not use a P.O. box. Your fiscal sponsor's address may be anywhere within the state of Minnesota, And because the fiscal sponsor must be a federally tax-exempt nonprofit, they may use a PO box if that is what is filed with the IRS as their official address, and it is also within Minnesota. So flexible support is meant to provide funding to organizations and groups with smaller arts programming budgets. Your organization or group's finances must be within the following annual spending caps for your most recent completed fiscal year. Again, this is something that sometimes trips up applicants every round. Do not use the financial data from your current fiscal year. Using your last completed fiscal year means that you have all available official financial information. For example, if your group's fiscal calendar runs from January 1st through December 31st, and you are applying in round one with the August 7th, 2026 deadline, your most recent completed fiscal year would have ended December 31st, 2025. If you were applying in round two, however, since the deadline is on February 5th, 2027, then you would use the fiscal year that ended on December 31st, 2026. So on the screen are the total annual cash expense limits by group type. Your organization or group may not exceed these limits. For arts 501c3 nonprofits, your total annual cash expenses must be $400,000 or less. For cultural or non-arts, non-cultural 501c3 nonprofits, as well as public entities, your expenses for arts programming must be $400,000 or less. For community education units, your total annual expenses for arts programming may be of any size. And for groups with fiscal sponsors, your total annual cash expenses must be $400,000 or less. This refers to your own expenses, not the expenses of your fiscal sponsor. And a note to add to cultural and non-arts, non-cultural 501c3 nonprofits, community education units, and public entities. You must be able to isolate your arts programming expenses from non-arts financial activity. To be eligible for flexible support, all applicants must have at least 3 people in leadership positions. At MRAC, a leader is defined as a person with the authority to make final decisions about the organization or group's operations, direction, goal, or mission. In the submittable application, you will list all leaders by name and role. You should not include people that are only leading or managing the proposal activities in this list. Additionally, there are specific requirements based on your group type. So all 501c3 nonprofits must include every member of your board of directors by name and role, and your executive director or its equivalent, regardless of whether they are volunteer or paid. Remember, per Minnesota state law, nonprofit organizations must have at least 3 board members, including a chair and a treasurer. So we will be asking for those individually. Public entities and community education units must include every organizational leader by name and role, and your executive director or its equivalent, regardless of whether they're volunteer or paid, again. Groups with fiscal sponsors must include every leader of your own group, again by name and role. You should not include the staff of your fiscal sponsor. As we mentioned previously, a portion of the funds will be set aside for organizations or groups whose leadership team includes a majority of individuals who identify as members of our priority communities we mentioned previously. You will be given the option to identify the number of leaders on your list that identify as any of the groups listed on the screen. You will not need to identify them by name. And I will pass it back to Ryan to talk us through eligible and ineligible expenses.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Now we're going to discuss eligible and ineligible expenses. As we mentioned before, this grant provides up to $25,000 to help organizations and groups create and sustain Minnesotans' access to the arts. Organizations and groups can get funding for operations and/or organizational capacity, certain equipment purchases, or facility improvements and/or arts programming. Let's look at some examples of each. And just remember that these lists aren't exhaustive, and other funding requests can fall into these general groups as well. For operations or organizational capacity, some eligible requests include paying rent or utilities for a space, software subscriptions, website updates, salaries or staff benefits, or insurance. Applicants can request funding for facility improvements or equipment purchases, but they must fit in the following restrictions. You may only request up to $5,000 for these expenses. Equipment purchases must be directly related to and necessary for creating access to the arts. Facility improvements to properties not owned by the organization or group require written permission from the property owner. And facility improvements may not be made to residential properties, including structures, pavements, fencing, and/or landscaping on residential property. With that in mind, some examples of an eligible request could include chairs for theater audiences, specialized printing equipment, or ADA accessibility improvements. And finally, applicants can request funding for arts programming activities in Minnesota or the purchase of art supplies. Some examples of eligible funding requests are a theater production, a series of music concerts, an arts day for kids, or maybe the painting supplies for an arts day. There are several types of proposals and activities that are ineligible for funding. And these include proposals that violate applicable federal, state, and local laws, rules, regulations, and ordinances. Proposals that attempt to influence any state or federal legislation or appropriation. Proposals that support activities that essentially are for religious socialization of the participants or our audience members. Proposals that discriminate against any persons or groups. And for the complete list of ineligible expenses, make sure you read the Flexible Support Grant Overview and application instructions available on our website. Now, a little bit about the application itself. The Flexible Support application has 4 sections. Part 1 is organization or group information. This includes the basics, such as your group name, address, etc., your leadership team, fiscal year and expenses information, annual arts participation numbers, and information about your fiscal sponsor if needed. Part 2 is the proposal description. You'll answer specific questions about your overall mission, as well as your proposal goals, activities, location, timeline, participants, and how it creates or sustains meaningful access to the arts for Minnesotans. And you can find the complete list of proposal questions in the Flexible Support Grant Overview and Instruction document. Part 3 of the application is the budget plan. You'll add the amount of funds you're requesting, the expenses covered by the funds, and additional information if your proposal requires funds beyond the MRAC grant in order to be completed. And this is required by the Minnesota State Arts Board. Part 4 covers data, outcomes, and evaluation. You'll enter information about artistic disciplines, an estimated number of participants and their demographics, outcome goals, and an evaluation plan. And just an FYI, if you do receive a grant award, you will return to your outcome goals and evaluation plan when completing your final report. For 2027, we've updated the way you will input additional funds required for your proposal that are beyond what you're requesting from MRAC. In the application, you will state the total amount of funds you're requesting from MRAC and describe what these funds will be used for. If the amount you're requesting from MRAC will cover your entire proposal, that is all you need to include. But if your proposal requires funds beyond those requested in your application to be successfully completed, you will need to complete 2 additional spreadsheets. The first one is the additional expenses description spreadsheet, where you will describe the additional expenses and list their amounts. The second is the additional funding sources spreadsheet, where you will list where the additional funds are coming from, the dollar amount, and whether those funds are secured or pending. If they're pending, you will indicate when you will know whether or not they have been secured. The total on this additional funding spreadsheet must match the total on the additional expenses spreadsheet. For this year, we created an instruction document called Filling Out Your Budget Plan Spreadsheets Guide to help you through this section. And you can download that guide at mrac.org/flexible support. And now a little bit about the application scoring guide. MRAC program staff actually do not choose which applications are awarded a grant. Instead, we have a community review system. MRAC trains community members and peers to become application reviewers. This includes artists, arts professionals, and other individuals from all 7 metro counties. They are required to use the Flexible Support Application Scoring Guide, which is also made available to you, the applicant. You can use this guide to help you complete your application with that scoring criteria in mind. Every year, we evaluate the scoring guide and evaluation criteria to make sure it best reflects the intention of the grant and focuses reviewers on the significant aspects of a successful proposal. Applicants should read the application scoring guide to understand what reviewers will be looking for as they evaluate. As you develop your answers to the proposal description questions, make sure that you are answering the questions in this scoring guide.
All right, so now moving on to using submittable. So you will use submittable to complete your flexible support application and for most of the communication that you will have with MRAC staff. When you are ready to start the application process, click the submittable link on the flexible support webpage. First-time applicants should make a submittable account with an email address that you check frequently. Some things to remember when you are filling out the application: do not include hyperlinks in the narrative text boxes, as reviewers are limited solely to the content of your application. Some applicants might want to discuss their website in their answers. However, if you type any domain extension such as .com or .org, Submittable will automatically turn it into a hyperlink once you click submit, and will therefore unfortunately get removed. Um, we suggest that if you want to discuss your website, uh, making references to it without actually using the URL itself for that website. So would you like to plan out your answers before getting into Submittable? As previously mentioned, we also have a narrative drafting document and budget plan drafting sheet as applicant resources. If you like to work out your answers beforehand, you can use these to start a rough draft of your proposal narrative and budget items. Just remember, you will have to then copy and paste the information into Submittable into your application. You can't upload the documents. Staff will not accept them via email as your submission. These documents are only intended to be drafting or practice tools for you. There are several spreadsheets in the flexible support application that you will use to provide information. So we've created two new guides to help you with these sections. So both filling your budget plan spreadsheets and filling out your leadership section, use screenshots for the flexible support application or from the flexible support application and examples to provide step-by-step instructions for these sections. And you can download both of these at mrac.org/flexible support. Finally, before you hit the submit button, you should make sure that you have answered every question marked required and double-checked all your answers, including budget amounts and totals. Once you submit your application, you cannot make any changes and cannot resubmit the application in part or in whole. And you can also not have multiple application submissions. A note on application accessibility. So MRAC staff are dedicated to creating an accessible application process for everybody. So if you have any questions or need an accommodation, please do reach out to us at flexiblesupport@mrac.org at least 2 weeks before the application deadline to give us a little bit of time to be able to provide those accommodations for you. You can get assistance according to your preference, usually over email or phone or by Zoom. So what happens after you submit your application? So after the application deadline, our staff worked hard to make the process behind the scenes as quick and smooth as possible. First, staff spent approximately 1 month reviewing each application for eligibility. After that, all eligible applications are then sent to the panel of reviewers who then themselves have about 1 month to complete their evaluations. We then combine all the scores for each application and get an average score. These average scores are then ranked from highest to lowest. This process takes about 1 week. And then the final rank sheet is sent to the MRAC Board of Directors, who then vote to approve the funding recommendations at one of their monthly board meetings. Notification award or declines are sent out soon after, typically within about a week or so of that board meeting. So the entire process from beginning to end takes about 14 weeks. So notification dates are December 1st, 2026 for round 1 and June 3rd, 2027 for round 2. And that brings us to the end. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at flexiblesupport@mrac.org. We are here to help. Again, my name is Pablo Siqueiros. This is Ryan Worden. we're here to help you, and as well as Masami Kawazato, we're the program officers during flexible support, and we're here to help you.